And thank you for agreeing to be, I mean, you need this and we need this. We need to be able to pour out the knowledge that we have in a recordable fashion. And for people like yourself and others who will, replace me and Michael at some point, so we have to, this is a necessary thing, informal as it is. We're just going to, lay it all out, and then someone can organize it and maybe even teach a class or even develop a postgraduate degree on the basis of it.
Well, I want to thank you, Father Seraphim. It's a real honor to have this time in this call and in the subsequent calls to be able to learn from you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being the recipient of, and willing to do this work,
Absolutely.
All right. So shall we begin?
Yep, let's go ahead.
In the name of the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Most Holy Theotokos, save us. Here we go. Webinars for Doxa users, webinar 1. So I'm going to share sort of a list of things that we're going to talk about. Is that it? What are you seeing now? The workbench? No.
I see your notes.
Were you seeing my notes? Good. Okay, so talking about how the ALWB functions is not very useful, okay, because Doxa will replace the actual how it does it. But what we want to talk about a lot is what it does. There are a lot of misconceptions of what ages was, and now, by extension, the liturgical workbench. And so we want to sort of set the record straight, and give other people the idea. So what we know, at any point, Jesse, that you want to ask a question, please, chime in, and or I don't know if you want to raise the hand thing, or just say you're the only one here, so just have a question.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So we are familiar with the DCS website, whether it's the GOA website or the Ages DCS or your own DCS or whatever. And we're going to talk about how we can do that, present services that are already integrated and collated and pre-prepared. And then also being able to link the media, both scores and audio recordings for teaching and learning purposes, and the other libraries of liturgical materials that are kind of statically available, sacraments and other services and those kinds of things. So Michael and I, met in 2012, was it? 2011, 2012. And he and a fellow had begun working on something similar to this. John, what was his last name? Anyway.
Just because you hesitated, it threw it out on my mind.
Yeah.
John Holder,
right. So we invited, at that time, Ages had incorporated, and we were a 501c3, and we invited a number of people, John Holder, Michael, and some other people, and we talked about what we wanted to do, and how we could do that. So Michael came with very specific goals. He's interested, obviously, in translation, but also in the annotation of those translations and creating tools so that the hymns can be translated into as many languages as needed. So those tools would be explanations of the hymns, and that kind of stuff. And I needed, did he leave? You're back. Your mic is off, but it doesn't matter. Can you hear me now? Are you good?
Sorry about that. I was just opening up the door.
Oh, okay. Okay. So,
Hi.
hello, greeting.
Sorry, I just had to open up the door.
Appreciate
Sorry for the interruption. That's not why the Wi-Fi went out. That was just a added bonus.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Father.
No problem. So Michael had, what he was looking for, and then I was already publishing the so-called e-matins, and it was very tedious and laborious, cut, paste, create the indexes from scratch, by hand. So I said I would like, some help doing this. And so we brainstormed and figured out kind of how we were going to go. And Michael was the genius. He was the genius behind the software. He didn't know a whole lot about
the Lord's the genius. He lends his knowledge.
he didn't know a lot about rubrics and liturgical stuff or how to pronounce liturgical things, but we got, over the years, it's been 11 years now of collaboration. Oh no, God, yeah. So we melded. So he said, I'll do yours if you do mine. So he created the DCS, and now as soon as the tools are ready in Doxa for expedient and streamline and to annotate the text that work can proceed as well. So we're going to talk about how the DCS with the pre-compiled service, that's how we're going to focus on what the theory behind it was, okay? Not the nitty-gritty of the mechanics of it, whether it's Java or Geo or whatever it is. We're not going to talk about that. So what do we have going here? So Michael created 2 domain-specific languages, DSLs. And just because I say those letters does not mean that I'm an expert in these things. These are things that Michael has told me about, so I'm telling you. So these are specific computer languages that would function for our purposes. So he created one for texts and one for templates. And he used terminology that was liturgically user-friendly, so that it would be immediately useful to people who know hymn, verse, rubric. Those kinds of terms were built into the language itself. Even went so far.
I'm sorry about that. Is that the LML, the liturgical markup language?
So that's the
Doxa version is LML, but yes, it's the same thing. LML is actually more powerful than the template DSL that I created for ALWB.
Okay.
But I believe you're retaining many of the liturgical terms within the.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's very specific to our goals. So let us look at. So I'm assuming that the people we are addressing have some idea about liturgical cycles and processes and stuff with real books. Okay. So it was necessary for us to digitize. If we wanted to manipulate digitally the liturgical books, we needed to digitize the books. And we needed to find a way to name things so that we could invoke them and whatever. So we used, let me share my ALWB with you. All right, what you're looking at is the legacy ALWB. Here, not that it matters where they are, but all these here on the left, all of those projects or all of those folders They are what we call libraries. Each of them theoretically we could call them languages. Okay, so you have in Spanish, you probably have one of these, or if there's a number of different versions of Spanish, each one has its own project. The one we're going to look at initially is the Greek one. So this presumably contains in digital form all the Greek texts that are in all the liturgical books. Theoretically, that's what we would want. And so we got much of our material from Father Leo Sheffy's digitalization of the liturgical books. And then over the years, we've done fair bit of proofreading and or comparison and editing, of that text. So we will look at our naming structure of how we were able to do that. So I'm going to look at the Mineon. We all know what the Mineon is, right? And so here's the Mineon. Then M01 means the month, M01 through M12. And now this is all the files for January. Now I want you to imagine opening the Mineon book to any date, let's say January 1st. Okay. And you look at it, and it's got whatever titles, and then it starts with the Vespers hymns, right? 1, 2, 3, however many they are. There's a glory, there's a both now, there's things that only appear on January 1st. So that's what's in this file. Can you see that? Yes. So the material, let's not worry about this up here for the time being. Okay, let's look here at the very first hymn, and it's called ME, which means Mineon, VE, Vespers, and the name of the key, Stickera 01.text. So what we basically had to do was look at the liturgical books and break them down into not their absolutely smallest parts. So we're not breaking them down into words or letters, but we broke them down into basically paragraphs or lines. So whatever has a paragraph, if you look at the Mineon and, it's got its own line break, it's a paragraph, that becomes a unique key. So that's what we have here. And then those things we decided would have properties as well. So here's the text of the hymn. Singatabanon Sutiud. So this whole thing is the text. This is the incipit if we need it. That means the first few words of the hymn. Here's again, the same key, but with dot melody in case it has a melody. We'll go into that. This key with dot mode gives us the mode. We'll go into that. And any other information that is specific to that hymn, so that key with its extensions or whatever, in this specific file, ME, M01, D01, and the Greek, and we'll go into the details of that, that would be a unique key, okay? That only with all that information, that's what identifies this hymn. If we were to go to January 2nd, we see that the first hymn again is Stickera 1, okay? So how is it distinguished from the other one? Well, obviously, because this one is prefixed by the date, January 01, day 1. This is prefixed by, month 01, D02. So the key, there's got some similarities to it, but it's identified through all that stuff. So the stuff that's in the Mineon files is what is from the Mineon that is not from anywhere else. If there is a line that says glory, well, glory appears in so many places, so that's not unique to the Mineon. If there's a line that says a verse from the Psalter, well, the Psalter is a different book. So it's not it's not, it doesn't belong to the Minyan. And if there are any rubrics that say now do the entrance or whatever, those are not unique to the Minyan. Those are someplace else. So basically, we've digitized in this book, in the Minyan book, those things that are peculiar specifically from the Minyan. This would be similar for other books as well. So if we look at Oktoichos, another popular book, that's called the Paraklitiki or the Oktoichos, and that has 8 folders, okay, for the 8 modes. So if we go to mode 1, so that's what Osi Oktoichos, mode 1, day 1, we have various keys, and here we have Stikira 1. And the actual hymn, you might be wondering why this key is Stikira 1 and not Stikira 01. That's because in the Oktoichos, there are never 10 Stikira, so we don't need the 2 digits. Okay, it's only up to about 6 or 7. So similarly, only the things that are specific to the Oktoichos will be digitized in this book.
Same.
Yep.
Sorry, I was just curious. The most general prayers, such as "Lord have mercy" or "Glory," what is the ID path for those?
I'll show you.
I'm not sure where the primary place is where they're stored.
So that would be in the outline. It's constants and redirects. So in each library, there's a folder called constants. Used to be called fragments, but now it's called constants. And that's where we have, for example, let's say prayers that are reused. Okay. So wherever we need Alleluia once, we've got a key for it. Wherever we need Alleluia 3 times, we've got a key for it. Wherever we have that particular line, Alleluia 3 times, glory to you, O God, we have that. Wherever we have, for example, come let us worship and bow down before God our King, we have it there. And all the 3 versions of that. Here's the creed. The creed lives, in this file of constants. Lord have mercy is here. All the exclamations of the priests are here. All the petitions of litanies are here. All the responses are here. And all those things that are reused that fall into the category of prayer. Things that are reused in another category would be the actors or the people who are doing or saying anything at a given time. So we have here a file called actors, and we will look at 2 files at the same time, so we can compare that. So I've got the Greek open, and I've got one of the English versions open. So all the libraries, all the languages and all the versions of English or whatever have this file. And for when we need Archbishop, we would invoke this key, and it would say in Greek Archiepiskopos. In Greek, it would say Archbishop. In English, it would say Archbishop. So it's only here once. These are the possible actors, and what we call them in any given language. Does that make sense? Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. And similarly, we have one called dismissals. So in the dismissals, these are all the, may he who rose from the dead, Christ our true God, those parts that remain the same are here once. Okay. And however, any jurisdiction or any language or any archdiocese decides that they're going to do their dismissals, that would be in their, in that folder, in that file. And so then whenever there's a dismissal that needs for Christmas, what is the prefix for Christmas, and what is the prefix for a Sunday, and what is this? So that's what dismissals is, and I'll show you how these things are used. But poets, sometimes a hymn, will say by Cosmas the monk or something like that. And so we've given, we have a list of the liturgical poets, and we put their name, how it's going to be in Greek, how it's going to be in the various languages. We have rubrical. Here are things that appear over and over again, like allowed, allowed, again, do this again, do this now, even the word and, anything that could be invoked that would be used more than once, we made a file, we made keys for those things. Another one is miscellanea. And that's where you have stuff like words like irmos and, we have, if we need parentheses or we need a line. I think this is going to be different in Doxa, but, there's a key for, in our current system, you have to have a way to insert a line or a dash or whatever it is, if that's what you need. And so, I created keys for these. Here, if it's verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, verse 4, that's what it looks like. Here are the modes, mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, mode 4. And there's odes 1 through 9. Here are the numbers. If I just need to say like number 1, I can invoke it through a key. That might be different, moving forward. We have Roman numerals, all these possibilities. Yeah. So that's where, to answer your question, that's where those kinds of things are. We call them constants now. Yes, Michael.
So everything that is in the libraries in ALWB is imported right into Doxa. However, there will be a few differences. So, for example, the ability to create a rule, a line, that's actually a key word in the liturgical markup language. But that key is still going to be imported into Doxa just because it's there. So.
Right. It may become obsolete or whatever. Like you said, there's also a way of surrounding something in parentheses, in a specific way rather than invoking a parentheses. And that's why sometimes you see like Lord have mercy in parentheses, but it looks like there's a space after the parentheses on either side. That's because there's an automatic space after a single character like that. That was how to do it. All right, then. So one of the principles, again, was not to repeat ourselves, if possible, not to repeat ourselves. So if the text of a hymn appears in many places in the Mineon, many times the Theotokia or, an Apolitikion or something appears, or like say there's a feast day of St. John the Baptist, and then the one later in the year for St. John the Baptist is using the same hymn, but we don't want it to appear in two places in the library, if possible, so that if it's ever translated, it could be translated once, and then it would appear all the time in the same translate. The translator won't think he or she hasn't translated, something when it's already been done. And the way we, you already know this, but the way we handle that is through redirects. So let's go. Let's look at a little English here. So this is the Didi's library. So we're going to let's go to, we know that January 6th is Epiphany. Okay. So here are the hymns from Epiphany. But in the post-feast of Epiphany, sometimes those hymns are repeated. So if we opened January 7th in the Mineon and went to the first Vespers hymn, it would be it would say, you know, "O Lord, our illumination, who enlightens." Okay, but that hymn was already here. That hymn was already here, so we don't want to re-say it. So we have what's called a redirect. So I don't know exactly how the new language is going to handle this, but currently what we do is here's Stichidon 1, and instead of quotation marks and a string, we have as the value, we have what's called a redirect, and we simply put the entire address of the entire key name, the file name, the domain and language, and the key. And then if we just hover over this, it gives us where that was. And if we want to, we can actually click on the redirect and it takes us to where it's at. I'm still in the process of finding hymns, you know, that are already somewhere else and creating redirects. You know, that's going to be, I don't know if we can even write a program that would do that, but in any case, that's do not repeat yourself. That's what we do. So that's with the redirects. And similarly with the mode. So here as a property, the mode is mode 2, but that we're not going to write mode 2. We know that like in GOA, we say mode 2. You know, in Greek, they say ikos defteros, you know, in maybe in the Antiochian Archdiocese, they say tone 2, or, you know, someone is going to say it a different way. Everyone gets to say it whatever way they want. But so here, you know, this would take us now, it redirected us to that miscellanea file. And here's that. Not that we needed to go there, but that's how that's done. And here's an example of the poet. Who was the poet of this? We're not going to write the poet's name because we have the poet in our list of poets. So that we always spell it the same. We always refer to that poet in the same way. No one has to make up, you know, a new translation of the poet's name. If you wanted to change the way that you say the poet's name, you change it here, and then it appears that way, you know, everywhere. The next thing on the list is the purpose of the library called public. So as I told you before, because these are what I use, you know, in the GOA, all those are, and maybe it's only in English, that there are so many versions of the same thing, you know. So currently I draw, you know, from many sources, almost like the compilers and editors of the liturgical books initially, maybe the manuscripts, they said, you know, well, we've got a canon here by so-and-so, and we've got Stikira by so-and-so, let's publish them all in one book, and it's called the Mineon. We kind of have that now in the DCS. But how we are able, for example, to have a running one file of a service that has a hymn that's my translation, and then maybe the next one is the OCA version because I don't have one of my own, you know, the next, you know, and then George Duval, and then, you know, Father Hoopus, and then, you know, Richard Barrett, whatever, whoever the translator is at every given time. How can we like manipulate so many translations all at once? There's two ways that we do that, but the one way only allows you to do one other translation. So this here, in client en public, is all redirects. So if we go here and we go to the Mineon and we open January 1st, like we've been opening, okay. So there are no strings in this. These are all redirects. They say for Stichidon 1, the English version will be mine. You know, for this first hymn, it's Didi's. The English version for the second hymn, oh, look, it's the OCA, because that's the one that we had. The English version for this hymn is OCA, you know. And it goes back and forth to wherever we were able to find, and in the old days when we were using Father Ephraim Lash, oftentimes we would, go to his library and get those stuff. So that's how this whole project of public acts as, I don't want to call it the clearinghouse. What do we call it? The thing that brings all the English versions together and makes them one version. But we are able to see in the, when you look at the DCS at the end of each hymn, you can see in blue, a little initials, that tell you which version it is, because it's multiple versions. It's our way of copyright, of recognizing the owner of that text or whatever it is. But that's happening here. That's happening in the public. So everything in public, in order to be able to publish one service with multiple English versions, interspersed, that's how we were able to do it. Does that make sense?
It's a very powerful and flexible solution for that.
The other solution was at the time of generating a server. Skipping ahead a little bit here, but Michael had built in, there's the default language, the default version, and a fallback. So in other words, if in the default language, let's say that the default was going to be my translation, Didi's, and if I didn't have it, then the second best would be, they would go look to see if OCA had it or whatever. But that wasn't enough, because we had so many different versions, so we made the default version this public file, and it always has something, because all of those are redirects.
Brother
All right.
Seraph,
Yes.
I was just wondering, currently there seems not to be any need for this, but if in a given language there ever were multiple jurisdictions producing, generating digital chant stand websites, how would that work with the public library? Currently it's just the language in public.
It may not be necessary to have public, because then you would, in the settings of the generator, you would say our English version is the one that the Antiochian Church uses, or our English version, or our Spanish version, whatever it is. It's if they have everything, like let's say Holy Transfiguration Monastery that has everything, right? And so if they digitize their stuff, they would not need a public to integrate a bunch of different English. They would have everything. I mean, they could have public and then just all the links go to them, or if they're the only English or you're the only Spanish, if it's just one language, then you wouldn't need the public.
Yeah, I was just imagining, like here in Central America, yeah, I mean, I guess it would depend on how it is in US public. I guess it would depend on, with Mexico, it would have to be
You would need it if you had different dialects that you were juggling, or different copyright, different sources that needed to be kept, separate for whatever reason. I don't know if that's an issue there, but just to give you a quick idea, we'll get to this later, but in the settings, so in the preferences, let's say for the GOA website, we look here, it says for liturgical texts, the preferred for the language 2, which is English, the preferred version is public. And then if public doesn't have it, go to the fallback, which there is no. Public has everything, right? But in your, in another situation, it might be, well, here we can see it in the Greek. Here it says the preferred, in other words, look first to see if the GRUSGOA, in other words, Greek of the Greek Archdiocese of America, might have its own peculiar way of saying something in a key. So the program looking for that first, and then there's hardly anything in that, in those files. But if it doesn't find that, then go to the regular Greek. And at this time, Michael, why don't you come in and explain the naming convention of the
Sure. So what we're looking at is a library or a domain, sorry. And a domain has three parts. The first part is a ISO language code. So GR means Greek. The second part is an ISO, that's International Standards Organization, ISO code for a country. So that's Greece. And COG means Common Orthodox Greek. In other words, through the ages, the way it's been standardized, the Greek text, that's what that is.
And that's something that last part we made up. So it's not ISO. The first ones are standardized way, the language and country, we didn't make that up. But whatever we call the rest of it, it's whatever we decided to call it. So GOA was easy enough, DDs is easy enough. So I mean, you can see it here in the names of the projects themselves. So here we had ENUK where, that meant English, not US. He's not in the US. He was United Kingdom. And then Kalistos where, who had graciously given us permission to digitize and use his things. Another one is, ENUS Andronacci, Father Andronacci, and so forth. Ephraim Lashes was ENUK Lash. So what would yours, Jesse, be in the country you are? How are you? What is your domain and language? How do you guys say it?
Well, it'd be we're using Mexico since it's the metropolis of Mexico. So we're using ES underscore MX underscore and then whatever that particular, would it be domain, Michael? Whatever for
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, actually, the way we've the standard way of talking about it is that, for example, GR cog, that whole thing is called a library, and the last bit is actually the domain, and that is defined by the designer working in ALWB or in Voxa. And so I think, Jesse, you're using the acronym for the name of the Greek metropolis of Mexico, but in Spanish, right? For your
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm already using multiple libraries depending on the different hymns and Bible translations too. But the main one is, as you said, Michael, this is the acronym for SAOGM. It's Holy Metropolis. The Holy Greek Metropolis of Mexico. I'm getting the syntax mixed up between the English and Spanish.
And now, are you personally doing translation?
Well, working in Spanish, I'm trying to avoid doing the translations myself. In certain cases, just to fill in things on a temporary basis, I have created a library for small little translations that I'm doing
with your name on it, right? With your identifier.
Correct. Yeah, that yeah. So ESMX Brando.
Okay.
But I'm trying to avoid that as a second language speaker.
And you see how many English resources we've got. How many Spanish resources are you currently juggling in order to put a service together?
I think it's 4. I think it's 4 different libraries.
Okay.
At this point, there's some materials that are just in the public domain online that I'm storing in one library. I have a few different sources for kind of official texts from the metropolis of Mexico, and I'm separating them by authors. And then the missionaries in Guatemala, the OCMC missionaries, have used certain texts, and it's not always clear where they came from. So I have a different library for those, and the domain there is actually GT for Guatemala instead of Mexico, since it's more specific. But I am using redirects. We have an ESMX public library, so some of those Guatemala specific hymns ultimately are where the redirects resolve for the Metropolis public library.
You do use a public project.
Yeah. Michael from the very beginning recommended that we name the public library so that we can keep things clear and organized.
Yeah, good. No, good.
And follow that important convention.
All right. So we did the purpose of the library called public. All right, resources that have specific IDs and resources that have relative IDs. The key ring. Okay. So now let me go back to sharing the when it comes time. Yes.
Sorry. I just wanted to mention the reason that I was curious about what would happen if there were multiple jurisdictions creating digital chant stand websites within a single language and geographical area is because I've thought ahead, what would happen. It would be wonderful in Spanish if there were growing interest from the different jurisdictions in using this resource. So that was one question that came across my mind. So far, it's just the Ecumenical Patriarchate under Metropolitan Athenagoras. But I thought, wow, if the OCA in Mexico were interested in this, what kind of convention would we have, since Spanish Mexico or ESMX public is already being used for the Greek metropolis?
Yeah, so that has to do with the texts. As far as someone else producing their own digital chant stand, that's not a hard thing to do. For I have produced customized DCSs for parishes. Okay, using the same software, the same template, the same everything. There's when it comes time to generate a website, you have to indicate, it's one of the settings, you have to indicate which of all the clients you want. So this is very rudimentary, but the one that's not commented out, that's the website that will be deployed in the development department. So test, obviously, when I'm just testing. But if I wanted to, when it comes time to generate the website for the GOA, I make that change, and it will send all the files that it generates into the website folder and the GOA website folder. So here, what I've highlighted there, that's the GOA DCS right there, all of it. You open it, we could launch it right now. It would, but I made a special one for a parish in San Francisco. They were having a particular service. They didn't need a whole lot of stuff. I got their specific information. So when it came time to generate their things, so it was convenient for them to be a little bit different from ours, I came over here and I have San Francisco Parish, And what this does is it points to a set of preferences that they have. They might say, we in San Francisco, or probably better to say if it's a Denver parish, we in Denver have our own way of saying the creed, that's not the GOA, So in that case, there would be a file that would say Denver, prayers or whatever it is. And then we would make the setting, their website setting would say, first go look and see if Denver Parish has its own text for this key, but if not, go to public. Okay, so that's the way you could do multiple clients, what we call clients, which would be multiple websites separate that might have minute differences or major differences. But when it comes to major forks, like if someone's going to use completely different rubrics, then they would probably have to have their own workbench and their own library of rubrics, because the rubrics are, we'll get into that in future webinars, but those they belong pretty much to the instance of the workbench. This is like this whole workbench, we would say, is the typicon of the patriarchy in whichever language, but it's the typicon of it's programmed, to be the typicon of the patriarchy. If someone wants to branch off and change something, they can, but they would have to, replicate the workbench and then change the templates for their own purposes, or create new templates or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah. For some of those clients, I wasn't clear if what you had produced there, was that just for exporting PDFs, or was that also to generate a separate website?
It's an entire website. All these things, website folder. For example, I don't do this now, but when I was at St. Nectarios, I would produce a St. Nectarios website, and so it would have St. Nectarios' parish name instead of, when it says for our Archbishop name, it would say our Archbishop Alexios, because it's in the Diocese of Atlanta. It would, when it would say sing the Apolitikion of the church, it knew to go and get the St. Nectarios one. It was customized for that parish. So I've done that for, St. Nectarios. I've done it for St. Nicholas and St. Louis. It's an entire DCS. I mean, I click on it, there's nothing in it now, but I mean, depending on, do they want the whole thing or do they want just certain dates? So nowadays, when I do they ask me, can you prepare the services for a consecration or for an ordination or whatever? I could just prepare PDF files and send them by mail, a PDF file, but I found that it's much easier just to create a mini DCS, which has everything and nothing. It has everything, but then only the services that they need, and that way, there's no like, oh, did I send you the latest file? It's online. It's online, and so that it's not hard to do that. So I don't know if the different clients in your situation need different rubrics, or do they just need different languages or different, versions of the language. If it's different rubrics, then probably, I mean, you could maintain multiple libraries of rubrics within one workbench, but it would be complicated. Yeah.
Thank you, Father.
Okay. And so now we have some time. We're going to talk about the keys that have specific IDs. So when it comes time to look at how we invoke things, like when we want to invoke, let's go to January 1st again. So we're at January 1st. So you're familiar with the various cycles in the church. We have the date, the calendar cycle, right? There's January 1st, January 2nd, that round and round it goes. We have the 8-week mode cycle, right? We have this week is mode 2, next week is mode 3, next week is mode 4, and then, it ends at Palm Sunday and it starts again, after Easter. We have the 11-week cycle of the Matins Gospels, the Eothinon cycle. We have the weekday cycle. Every day of the week has particular commemorations and particular things unique to that day, right? So that and all the other cycles have keys that can be invoked and the program figures out which day, which month. So I could, when I invoke January 1st, I don't type out the whole address of this. I just say, give me stick your own one on this day. And so, and if it's a, you know, and it goes and it gets it. If we were in the Octoicos and it said, I don't tell it to give me mode 1, I tell it to give me the mode of the week. And it goes and it figures out, Michael's created the algorithm, so it knows on such and such a date what mode of the week it is, what day of the week it is, what everything else, you know, if it's a day of the Triodion, if it's a day of the Pentecostalion, all those cycles are handled automatically with what we call relative IDs. That's the RID in the templates, where we haven't gotten there yet. But the ones that can handle relative IDs are any of those books and on any of those collections that are materials of those cycles. So we can name them. We have the daily cycle. That's for the 7 days of the week. Everything that's in here is governed by RIDs. The Elthina, everything in here can be invoked by RIDs, RIDs. Everything
RID
in the
meaning
Mineo,
relative ID.
Relative IDs, right. Everything in the Octoicos can be invoked by a relative ID. Everything in the Pentecostalion can be invoked by a relative ID. Everything in the Synaxarion can be invoked that way. Everything in the Triodion can be invoked that way. So, yes, it is possible to type in the whole, you know, file name and the thing, but then you will only get that. You will get that specifically, but not anything. So it is important to, when we get to the cycles, we had to figure out which cycle sort of supersedes all other ones, because we have dates, we have days, we have 8-week cycles, we have the movable cycle, which is from the beginning of the Triodion to the All Saints days, was 127 days, which is the movable cycle, but that moves. So the only constant is the calendar, the 365 or 300, you know, however many days there are in the year, in any given year, whether it's Easter, whether it's Christmas, whether it's a Sunday, whatever, it's the date. So like even on Easter, which the day of Easter moves, we still read the Synaxarion of the date of that year. So we figured out, okay, everything's going to be date driven. So on any given, so that date cycle supersedes all the other ones. And then the program takes the date and then calculates all the other cycles relative to that date and in that year, specifically that date and the year. So January 1st, 2023, is it a Sunday? Do this. Is it, you know, which mode of the week is it? Do that. Which day of the Triodion? Do that. You know, it brings everything together as needed, but based on the date. So those are governed by relative IDs, but there are other books of the church that are not part of a cycle. And let's say the Orologion, right? So the Orologion has, you know, like Paraclesi service, you know, like the small Paraclesi service is in the Orologion. You can never invoke this through a relative ID because there's nothing, it's not relative to anything. It is just what it is, you know. So these would be invoked by specific IDs. So, for example, in this file of the small Paracleses, here are the key names. HO stands for Orologion, CA stands for canon, and the title, and there's the string with the value of that. Yeah. And then every file has a similar. Every version has a similar file of one for small Paracleses. What was our naming convention for the Orologion was we looked at the chapters of the Orologion and we divided into like 26 or 27 sections. So S2 is the midnight office, SO3 is matins, SO4 is the first hour. I mean, I could have given it another name, but it just seemed easier just to call them by, by their number. But these are like chapters in the Oroloyon of the various groups of prayers and things. Now, many of the things in the Oroloyon are redirects because it's taking from them, this, it's taking from the Octoecos that, it's taking from the daily cycle this, and it, puts it all together. These files, however, are the parts that are only found or found first of all in the Oroloyon. And then if we need to redirect to it, we will.
Father,
So that's, yes.
just to let you know, we have 5 minutes left if we're trying to keep to 60 minutes.
Okay. Actually, that, okay, so I'm pretty much done, I guess. Now, if there are any questions, I mean, here on the outline, it says there's a key ring in the system project. I mean, the key ring would tell us here are the libraries that are governed by relative IDs. And I know that may not mean anything to other listeners at this time. It will when we get to the templates, but these have their keys can be invoked based on the date, and it'll give us what we need. All right. Yeah, I'm kind of tired too. So any other questions? So
that's for me for now.
Yeah, okay. So just to rehash our outline, we talked about the goals of what we were trying to accomplish. Let me share that one I can. Okay. So we talked about the two goals. We needed to do a digital library. So I kind of showed how we separated everything and digitized it. Everything has a peculiar name and grouping. We looked at the books. We talked about the cycles. We talked about the file naming structure. We said that there's a key and a value for every paragraph. And we talked how the keys are named. Of course, we created the names of the keys. But we tried to use liturgical language, like stikira 1, stikira 2, stikira, whatever, glory, the glory of the stikira, the glory of the both now of the stikira. We talked about the principle of not repeating ourselves, the first instance of hymns, and then redirects to it. We talked about the constants, the purpose of the library called public. We talked about specific IDs, relative IDs, and we're at the end.
So I'd like to mention, Father Seraphim, it's really amazing what you've done, because when you think about it, when the Bible was written, of course, over hundreds of years, it didn't have chapter and verse. There was no system to refer to a specific verse. That came in the Middle Ages. You have done the equivalent of that for the liturgical text. We now have the equivalent of chapter and verse to refer to each specific paragraph within the liturgical books. And that's wonderful and very amazing. So thank you for doing that.
I created those keys. Michael created the computer language and the ability to do that, but he wasn't the liturgics person. He was the computer person. And so then using the tools that Michael made, then I thought about it and said, what would be the appropriate name for keys? And it may not be perfect. Maybe there's a better way of doing it, but that's how we ended up doing it. And he's right. Now we have a way of referring to him. Now, whether that becomes an international standard, I don't know. Maybe it is already international because you're in another nation there.
Yeah, I've thought about that before. How the just as the English language has been so defining, like with HTML or other programming languages. I don't know much about other programming languages, but it's interesting to see how that's happening also with LML and with this. It's not in Greek, Sticheron, the key is in English.
Yeah. Now, here's the problem. The Slavic, churches, which is probably the majority of Orthodox, in the world, they have similar books, similar, structure of their libraries, but it's not a one for one for the hymns, especially when it comes to the Minayon. And so that would be considered either if we were to enter, a Slavic language, into the current library, it would not be in the same order that is in their books, or they just branch and maybe use the names of the keys that we have, but then it won't be one for one. Our what do we call it? Our base language, our source language is Greek. So we say Greek is the first, and then everything lines up with the Greek. It's not an empty key, it's the Greek. It's the key with the Greek text, and then every other language would mimic that Greek text. That's not the case with Slavonic, with the Slavonic books. They don't line up with the Greek books. So that, it's an issue, but we haven't any Slavic clients. So.
Yeah.
All right, 701.
Okay, so the next one, let's see, Thursday, are you available, Jesse? I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm available. If it's possible, whenever it's possible to do it during the daytime, it works a little bit better for me just with the internet connection here. But
Yeah,
this is working fine. I am available in the evenings, so that's fine with me.
so I think we're not, I don't know of anybody that's going to be attending Thursday except for you, Jesse.
Let me see how my Thursday is. I'm available anytime Thursday. So if you want, if you're sure that no one else is going to attend and you want to do it earlier, unless you inform the people or whatever, I'm game. And it might be a shorter one because webinar 2 is a deep dive into key name conventions with keys with values, keys with functions. Yeah, and we'll look at a sample file. So whatever you want.
Yeah. So we said 8 a.m. Pacific on Thursday would be 10 for the two of you, right? 10 a.m.
Yeah, that's not the best time for me.
Okay,
Either,
what works good for you, Father?
after 12 my time.
Okay. What if we said, well, let's see, 2 o'clock my time?
It's 4 o'clock.
Yeah, if we said, does that work well for you guys? The two of you?
You said 2 o'clock
Pacific. That's 4 o'clock your time.
Yeah.
Or we could move it up, say 30 minutes, if that makes any difference.
You mean like 30 minutes earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
So
That'd be
3:30.
better. 3:30.
That works well. Sure.
Okay. So the next meeting will be Thursday at 3:30 Pacific. 3:30 Thursday,
Central.
3:30 Central, 8:30. No, that's not 8:30. That's 1:30 Pacific. Okay.
All right.
Good.
Would it be okay if I take a screenshot of all of us? Would you all mind?
This is all recorded. So
Oh, that's fine.
here we
Okay,
are.
just so we all can smile. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Okay, cool. Thank you again, Father Seraphim.
Okay, we'll see you in a couple of days.
All
Take
right.
care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.